Greetings, Shamus Finnegan here, wishing you a happy St. Patrick's Day, and to bring you another chapter in the story of our patron saint. Excuse this mess here. Uh, my wife, Florrie Finnegan, she says, if you're going to have that rowdy bunch here again, she says, would you paint this room? I said, well, why don't you wait to tell me the last minute? Well, it's the day before St. Patrick's Day, and you come up with this stuff. She just paint it. And, there'd be no peace unless you do. So, anyway, I'm setting to paint it, but I'll have to get this out. I said, well, Pat first became a priest. He wondered if there was some mission he could undertake that would make himself more worthy into getting into heaven. And he was looking for a cause that no one had previously addressed. Oh, when he came across this fellow he met in a pub, and he was just returned from a foreign land, and he spoke of how the snakes were the cause of horrible things in a place called Ireland. He said how they were responsible for shortages of food and unrest among the good Catholic people, and they were responsible for shortages of food and the women folk and, debauchery and excessive language. And, it was terrible. The sin. And how could he get rid of, there was no one to get rid of the country of the snakes. Yeah. Patrick thought for a second. He says, here's an opening I could fill. He says, I could probably get those snakes out of there. So he said, what am I going to do? He says, surely this could set me apart from other holy men seeking recognition. So he went to the Pope. That's right. He went to the Pope. And he told him what he had heard. And the Pope said, he had never heard of anything like this. He was aghast. He said, such goings on, not right. It took some convincing, but Pat finally got him to send him to Ireland to get rid of the snakes. He said, Pat, I want you to go to Ireland and drive the snakes out. Pat said, that was good. And he took off and he was headed for Ireland. I think the Pope may have said it just to get rid of Pat. He stopped him from bothering. Well, anyway, he went along with a sturdy shillelagh and a song of God to drive the snakes out of Ireland. And when he got there, he searched high and low and he couldn't find the snakes. He said, where are these snakes that this fellow told me about? And he finally, someone said to him, Pat, by God, man, Ireland is an island. There are no snakes here. He says, there's no snakes. He says, well, Pat explained what this man had told him. He says, well, wait a second. He says, there's a bunch of nasty thugs. He says, they're running around and they're doing all of these things. And maybe the guy you met, he had no other way to describe them but to refer to them as snakes. He says, well, the snakes were treacherous and sneaky, and Pat figured, I've got to get a way to get rid of these snakes, but how could I do it? So he says, he was flabbergasted to say the least to find out there were any snakes. And he was a bit nervous because he had misled the Pope. He had tricked the Pope into thinking that Ireland was full of snakes all over the place. He said, I've got to do something. So I'll get excommunicated, I will. So anyway, he organized a festive dinner, and he invited all these snakes there for a free meal of corned beef, cabbage, and kegs of beer and Irish whiskey. And they all came, and they all ate hearty, and they all got drunk. Now, with the help of the townspeople who were anxious to get rid of these snakes, Pat tied them up, loaded them in carts, and drove them to the harbor where they were transferred to ships and sailed off to Greenland. Now you tricked the snakes. Well, one thing left to do. Pat spoke with the townsfolk, and he said to them, you're so pleased to get rid of those snakes. He says, you have to help me because you got to back my story because the Pope's going to want to know what happened, Pat. He says, He says, well, if you don't do it, I'm going to get excommunicated. Sure as shooting, those snakes will be back. Well, they all swore they'd do it to a man. And Pat had tricked the Pope a second time. And actually, he tricked him a third time, forgetting to let him stay there in Ireland. Well, anyway, to commemorate the occasion, the people combined his name Pat with Trick, P-A-T-T-R-I-C-K, as Pat had tricked a great number of people to accomplish the feat. Eventually, it was shortened to Patrick, with no hyphen for convenience sake, and he became a saint much later, but that's another story for another time. But now it's time for our annual St. Patrick's Day feast. We have our St. Patty's Day uh, eggs and shamrock cake. So let's eat and celebrate the grandest of holidays. Oh, by the way, we have a new design for the box for St. Patrick's Day. You remember the old one that said Shamus, famous Shamus, St. Patrick's Day eggs. This time we have a clear box that you can see the eggs through, so everyone can enjoy them. Now you see these eggs? Look at them. We feed the chickens. We feed them shamrocks, and the eggs come out like this. And some of these eggs, look at it. The chickens got into the strawberry patch, and they was eating strawberries, and it miscolored some of the eggs. And anyway, the leprechauns down in the village, they've been working on a new design for the logo and everything, and we'll be coming up with that soon. And of course, being the day before St. Patrick's Day, as bad as Flurry, because they never get anything done. And here's the old St. Patrick's Day cake that we always have, and it's a beauty this year. Would you look at this cake? In the shape of a shamrock, made with shamrocks. That's right, made with shamrocks. That's how we get it to be this green color. And it tastes delicious. Have you ever eaten shamrocks? I'm sure you have. Anybody that hasn't eaten shamrocks, I pity them. It's something to behold. And of course, we have our St. Patrick's Day beverage. Here you go. And here's a glass. Here's the milk. St. Patrick, bless this milk. Look at this. Shamrock milk. Another miracle for St. Patrick's Day. And I want you all to enjoy a piece of cake, shamrock eggs. If you send us $19.95, we'll send you two dozen of these eggs and a cake, and we'll send you a bottle of this shamrock milk. And when you pour it, it doesn't turn green until you pour it, because people will think it's moldy in the refrigerator and they won't drink it. And so we'll pour it in the glass, it turns green. So here's to you. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Aaron go bra. Just remember, Shamus loves you. We'll come back again next year and bring your friends, eh?